Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Greg Glenn.
Thanks, and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about NIL and some insights. That's right, actually, NILinsight.com. We're going to be talking with Brian DiNapoli. He is the founder of NILinsight.com, a passion project dedicated to supporting student athletes and their families with trusted resources on mental health, substance abuse, prevention, player safety, NIL opportunities, academics, and more. He has over 25 years of experience in the public sector. He currently works in alcohol and drug prevention and serves as a dedicated community football coach. He coordinates a bunch of housing support for justice-impacted individuals. He also hosts the NIL Mindset podcast, where he interviews athletes, coaches, and community leaders about their success on and off the field. We're happy he's joining us. Brian, welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, this is going to be great as we dive into the episode. Obviously, NIL has exploded here over the last, 4 years. A lot of people talking about it. How much money can, athletes make? And you've kind of done something a little different in the NIL space with NILinsight.com. Talk to me about where this idea came from and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Greg, for allowing me to be on today. So as you mentioned before, this is really a passion project for me. I've always had a passion for sports, love sports. As a youth, I played soccer. I like to say before it was cool, before it was really popular. And also, played in high school. I did not play in college. Played some intramural soccer in college, but this idea came to me right before 2021 when the NIL, came into existence in July of 2021. So I launched this website around that time. And also a little backstory, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I quit alcohol over 25 years ago. So two of my passions are drug and alcohol prevention and sports. So I thought it would be cool to put together a resource webpage, a webpage for athletes and parents on NIL, since it was going to be so new, and it still is new back in 2021. So the idea just came to me one morning. I woke up and I just love to be a connector. When I meet someone, I'm thinking, who do I know that can help them get better type thing. So I'm not trying to make a nickel off of this. This is purely just volunteerism. So I decided to just put this together. You mentioned previously on mental health, drug and alcohol prevention, NIL courses, websites, places they can go for legitimate NIL resources, and player safety, academic, financial, in some places where athletes can connect and volunteer.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too. When I talk to athletes about building their athlete brand, it's finding a cause or finding something bigger than yourself. And you've provided a huge platform here, in my mind, for athletes to come and see all the different things that they could do, all the resources that are available, the organizations, including NAMI, which is great. Obviously, September is National Suicide Awareness Month, and having Amber Breton, who's a national ambassador for NAMI, and what she's doing, and I know how it makes her feel when she's able to help people. And I imagine that's probably the same feeling you have when you put up a new resource or you find out about something, or you can connect someone. And I want to give you a huge shout out, just so everybody knows. Logan Hale, a pliable athlete, hosts Putting for Puppies every year, which is a youth golf clinic to raise awareness and funds for Lifeline Puppy Rescue in her home state of Colorado. And I connected with Brian about this days before this year's event in 2025. And he gratefully donated to the cause. Logan was extremely grateful. And I think that's a good example, Brian, where again, you were able to contribute, build a relationship, help an athlete who's trying to do good. And since then, Logan has reached out to you and we've formed even more connections.
Yes, that's fantastic. And I thought that was a great opportunity to get involved. And also, I like to promote athletes that are using NIL for good. Most people think, oh, these athletes are just going out to buy a bunch of fast cars and other stuff like that and go out and party. But most of them are doing great things. I just read yesterday the Iowa State quarterback, Rocco Becht. I love the way he plays, that he hosts free camps in the summers for kids in the neighborhood. And also, I read the Rutgers women's soccer team. They do a lot around mental health awareness, and this being Suicide Awareness Month. So, and then a former UCLA quarterback, he pays it forward. His name's Chase Griffin, and he's an advocate. He goes to Washington advocating for student athletes with everything going on with revenue sharing and NIL.
Yeah. And there's so much that, there are so many NIL stories of athletes doing good. And I think that the more that those continue to come out, the better, so we can change the narrative on some of these athletes that are making the millions, yes. But at the end of the day, as we know, 98% of athletes are not going to go play pro sports. So setting them up for future success is, in my mind, what's most important, even if they do go pro. So let's talk about growing up a little bit. What got you into sports? Brian talked about your soccer, but talk to me about maybe your favorite athlete and kind of who has impacted your career.
Yeah, great question. I'm a passionate Georgia Bulldog fan. Practically
Okay.
was a Bulldog from birth, so I've always loved the dogs. And yeah, going way back, some of my heroes. There was a guy named Terry Hogue who played in the NFL for a couple years, but he was a walk-on. He was just a underrated guy coming in. I don't think he had any stars by his name. He was a safety, but played just with a tenacity and was just a great teammate and a great person off the field. So he's probably my all-time favorite Georgia Bulldog. Of course, going back to Herschel Walker, and there was a receiver named Lindsey Scott and Amp Arnold, the two of them. But also my favorite was probably Buck Bellew. He led us to the 1980 national championship against Notre Dame. So I really idolized those guys. And I heard Buck speak about a year ago. He's a local host at 680 The Fan here in Atlanta. And I went up to him, and he was very, very gracious. So he was awesome. And also, I'm a community kicking coach. I brought soccer and football together, my two favorite sports. I think my head is with soccer, no pun intended, but my heart is with football, if that makes sense. And
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and Kevin Butler was an excellent kicker for UGA back in the the early '80s. So he's one of my other favorite Georgia Bulldogs. But also, of course, the Falcons. There was a quarterback named Steve Barkowski. He played at Cal. The rumor was he could, back before social media, of course, he could throw the ball 100 yards, but he had a great arm, and yeah, he was just a great player. He led us to a 12-4 season, ironically in '80, but then we lost in a heartbreaker to Dallas in the playoffs. But those memories stick out to me, and I remember going to my first Georgia game and seeing number 34 Herschel and Buck handing him the ball and ripping off a 70-yard run. And it was just really amazing. And the goosebumps I had back then feel the same today when I go back to Sanford Stadium in Athens. And I had season tickets. I've kind of winded down a bit, and I still go to a few games a year. But my heart is really with Athens. I live in Atlanta, but I love Athens, Georgia, anything UGA.
Well, it seems like too that has fueled your passion for college sports, obviously with the Bulldogs and your history there. And I think that's why you resonate so well, probably with a lot of these college athletes, is because you really love college sports. And I feel the same way. I feel like this is an opportunity for growth, and college sports has become now obviously a huge industry since NIL really took off. And there's so many different ways that athletes now can go to college, get a degree, and go pro. And it's really the whole package now. So what do you see as kind of like your next big project as you're working on NIL Insight, or some things that you've seen in the NIL world that you want to try and address? You talked a little bit earlier about, NIL for good and trying to do that. It seems like you're trying to provide as many resources and organizations. What would you like to see happen next?
Yeah, another great question. There's a group out there called Protect Your Game, and what they do is they go to high schools and they talk to them about how drugs and alcohol can affect the way you play the game. It can affect recovery, just just everything, your stamina, all of that, just affecting your teammates. And I think that's what's missing. I think there is a lot around mental health awareness, probably not where we need to be, but there is an excellent group out there called Helinski's Hope. I know you've probably heard of them. It's a Washington State player that committed suicide, and his parents started a organization called Helinski's Hope around mental health activities for student athletes, and they do an amazing job. I think there needs to be something similar to substance use because, from what I'm reading, there are a lot of players just because of the mental health side of it. They're stressed from playing and all the pressure of NIL and performing. I think a lot do turn to alcohol and drugs, and there needs to be more of an outlet. And of course, I provide information like drugfree.org and other information on my website, but I think something more tailored toward athletes. But this Protect Your Game program is really great. They're relatively new, and they, like I said, mainly go to high schools. And I heard the executive director speak at a conference in Washington, and they had a football team from Boston, and it turns out they were losing the majority of their games, and they were trying to figure out why. And they figured out this was a football team. They were all partying on Friday night, so they lost all those games on Saturday.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So, yeah, for sure. So they went through this program and learned about it, and they turned around. I think they were 2-8, and the next year they were 7-3 and made the playoffs.
Wow, that's great. That's a great success story right there. Yeah,
It is. So I'm working with them and hoping to do some work with them in Georgia and hopefully even promote them nationally. And she's trying to, the executive director, her name's Debbie Burnt. She's trying to perhaps maybe one day do this with colleges too. But I think that's a missing piece.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of education that needs to still happen in the NIL space. We talk about it all the time as you think about, athletes who are now coming out of high school, and they are kind of coming in raw, if you will. And if they haven't had experiences or they haven't been educated, what college is going to be like. And there's so many now different programs where athletes who are in college can go and help athletes who are in high school. There's a lot of mentorship programs. Athletes to Athletes is one of them. But the idea that there are so many athletes who can help each other because they've gone through something similar, I think is really important. Let's stay on that topic. What would be some of your best advice for an athlete today who is a high school or soon to be college athlete?
Yeah, I think paying it forward. You mentioned I love what your athlete did with that punting for puppies. I think the number one way to be successful, I was learned from my dad, who's one of my mentors, is to help others become successful. And that's the first thing I'm thinking when I get a phone call on my current job or a neighbor, they're in need of help. I'm like, who do I know in my sphere of influence that can help them? I think helping others, just going out and volunteering, a lot of this, like I mentioned, the quarterback for Iowa State, host these free camps. I think just that paying it forward, being that force multiplier. I call it the force multiplier effect. You do a good deed for someone, and then they pay it forward to someone else. I think that's an excellent way. I think most student athletes are so busy that a lot of them, during football season, they probably don't have time to go out and party and do that as much. But during that off season, I think giving back and that idle time is when you can get in a lot of trouble. I know when I started drinking, it was, during that idle time that you tended to make the wrong decisions. We're all human. We've all done it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then also, how can people stay in touch with you or follow your content or new resources? Talk about your, social media and your website.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. So it's www.nilinsight.com. NIL Insight, and I'm very active on Instagram. I usually try to post inspirational messages, information about the 988 hotline. If you're ever in need of any kind of assistance, mental health, or drug and alcohol, you can dial or text 988 anytime, 24/7, 365 days a year. So I promote a lot of those activities, and there's also a great content person with NIL named Sam Green, and I usually kind of repost her information. I think her heart is in it for the athletes, and I love what you're doing, Greg, helping those like D2 and D3 athletes, monetize their NIL because I think they're hungry and there's opportunities for them to do that. So I like to promote them. So it's at NIL Insight on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter also. So I'm pretty active on both of those. I'm also on LinkedIn too. I try to promote articles. You probably know the gentleman Mitt Winter,
Yeah.
he's really great on anything legal around NIL. He's a machine. I mean, daily
Yeah.
he provides updates. It's amazing. So
Yeah, it is.
I try to post his information, Greg. Really usually a couple times a week because it's so valuable.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I like what you said too about, how we're trying to help those that deserve to be helped, and they are contributing to their community. Like you said, I work with D2, D3 athletes. I've got a whole bunch of D1 athletes, but at the end of the day, what I always say is that, I'm looking for good athletes that are great people. And that's exactly why I think they've been successful in the work that I've done with them and what they've done on their own. You talk a little bit about these camps, right? And starting, free camps. Well, I've got athletes that, who we've just talked about with Logan Hale raising money for, her Humane Society. You got Cooper Farrell, who's, a type 1 diabetic. He's raising awareness and funds for type 1 diabetes. And the list can go on and on. And if you start to tie your brand with these causes or these charities that you want to support, now people are going to learn a lot more about you and you're going to raise a lot more money. And, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Hannah and Emma, which are really the flagship story of Pliable with what they did with their hashtag Cure Cancer cleats. That is a phenomenal story. If you haven't had a chance to take a look, but look up the Magic Cleats and then the names Emma Eubank and Hannah Dukeman from Ball State. Phenomenal story about what they did with their cleats, and then it led to so much more. As you and I know, Brian, you start doing one thing and then you meet more people, and eventually they ended up raising over $4,500, and their story is still not done because we've got the book now, and the book will be sold, and proceeds will benefit childhood cancer awareness. So there's so many things that athletes can do. And obviously you're doing a whole ton of work here, Brian. And as you said, this is your passion project. What's next for you, or what do you see as your next big project, or what you want to be able to do with NIL Insight in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Eventually, I would like to probably make it interactive, kind of a space for athletes to go where they could share resources together and just communicate with each other on how to navigate NIL, how to navigate the stresses of the game, parents,
Yeah.
fans, just social media, all those things. So that's an idea that came to me. It would be cool to make it more interactive. I just don't right now have the wherewithal to do that, or probably the funds to do that. So this is really the grassroots of the grassroots, but that's something I've really thought about doing. And this isn't work for me. I wake up every day and I'm really on fire for it. I feel so passionate about this. And previous to this, when I quit alcohol, a little backstory, I started diving into political campaigns, and that prompted me out of my shyness. I was really a shy kid and a shy person, but that sort of catapulted me out of that. And I got out of the political part of it and I'm focusing my energy into this. I heard Taylor Swift, mentioned about a couple months ago, and it really hit me that we only have so much energy each day, and to utilize that energy for good and not get it drained by just outside activities that are out of our control. In other words, control the controllables type thing.
Yeah, my daughter's a Swiftie, and I can tell you the song that where she says, you're being too loud, right? And I think that's what you're speaking about, is it's trying to focus where your positive energy can have the biggest amount of impact. And obviously, she has been very successful, and now the engagement to Travis Kelce will only take that whole thing to a whole nother level. Speaking about personal athlete branding, I don't know if there's any way to get your brand a bigger boost than getting married to Taylor Swift. That's probably a big one. But nevertheless, that's a topic for another day and probably another podcast entirely. But I just want to say thank you. And the other thing, too, when you were talking about what's next for you, I could see you hosting, and this may not be a heavy lift, at least in the short term, is something like an open webinar where athletes could come. You could just, even do it on Instagram Live if you wanted, and try to get athletes to come in, share what's on their mind, or, hey, I've seen this, or, hey, I wanted to tell you about a resource. And, maybe it's like office hours and it's open office hours and they're telling you about like, hey, I saw this program, or, hey, my teammate is doing this. I want to share this with people. That may be a great way for you to build a community and do it in real time. Cause I agree. I think that's where this could be headed for you is the real time sharing, because there's a lot of resources out there right now for NIL, and I know this personally, having worked with over 35 athletes across the country, is they don't want to sit there and watch a video to learn something. I mean, we're talking about a generation that has been on iPads and iPhones and devices their entire childhood, and they want to come and they want to get answers quickly and they want to talk to people. And hear other people's stories. They're not necessarily going to read about it in a book, or they're not going to watch a 30-minute webinar that's already pre-recorded. So I think that hearing real people, real stories would be the way I would go if I were you, to try to bring these people together. And you could promote it through your website and all your social media, and you would go live. And if 2 people show up for the first one, then that's 2 more people that you impacted today than you would have before. So
I love that idea. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. One of my favorite rock bands is REM.
Oh yeah.
They're from Athens, and I think the first time they played, they said they had less than 10 people there. Well, the same for anything. I like hard rock too, like Guns N' Roses. I think they played in front of 20 people their first time. So that I love that.
Well, and I always say this too about, the business that I've tried to build here with Pliable, is that Rome wasn't built in a day, and being an Italian guy, right? Yeah, you understand is, you've got to be able to build it. And I've done things that have started with 10 people myself, and then all of a sudden they've grown a lot bigger, and a lot faster. And so I think that a lot of times it's just getting started, right? And giving people that place to go. And I think you'd do very well with it. And I think you'd meet some amazing, amazing athletes. So when you do it, I'll get you Pliable athletes who will hop right on there. And you want to get more than 2 people, we'll get you more than 2 people. I can guarantee you.
That would be amazing, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also probably recommend doing it during their down times, right? So like if you're going to do your first one, I would do it maybe over like the holiday break, the winter break, right? Rather than like in the, March Madness time period is probably not a great idea. You know what I mean? But maybe then obviously end of May, where things are still fresh and raw, from their school year, would be a really good way to do it. And maybe you do it 2 times a year, to start, and then you just keep growing it and see where it takes you, Brian. So
That's great. A friend of mine told me everyone should have a BWG, a big wild goal.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
is going to be one for me for sure. I wasn't even really thinking that way, but
yeah.
honor to
Well,
be on here and so thankful for this.
yeah, well, and for more information, and as Brian gets it up and running, just go to nilinsight.com. And we are so glad that Brian was able to join us, and very grateful for all the work that he's doing in the NIL space. So, Brian, thanks for coming on, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. I am Greg Glynn. I'm glad you could tune in, and stay pliable, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast, because that's how we roll.